Hi, and welcome to Launchpad, an interview series of rocket fuel that I have with prominent members of the rocket pool community. Today's episode, as always, is a very special one because we have superphiz, who's a community activist, staking evangelist, and all-round super awesome guy that everyone loves. And Fizz, would you like to give a quick introduction to yourself for people who might not know who you are?
Hey, so first, I'm so glad to be here. I love your podcast. I love what you're doing. Like, it took me so long. I'm kind of a slow adopter, and so I was like, it's someone else doing another podcast. It'll last 3 days, and then it'll be gone. And so I didn't really give it much attention. But lately, it's a staple of my day. So I really appreciate your work.
I'm so
Thank you.
honored to hear that. Like, and just yesterday in ethfinance, you promoted the episode that I did with Thomas, and in that episode, in the post that you did, I said, I'm so honored by you acknowledging that because so much of what I do was inspired by so much of what you do. So it's like it's really nice that like that you're recognizing that and you're seeing that, and the other people in the community are seeing it too. Like, I really feel like not only has like my prominence in the community gone up a lot, but also more and more people are recognizing the work that I'm doing. And it's really touching when I put so many hours and so much effort into this, and the fact that people see that it's valuable and it's something that they is useful for them really gives me a lot of energy, and like really gives me the maintains my passion, right, to keep going. So thank
Yeah.
you so much for that. But okay, let's go back to you now. So who are you?
Yeah, so I'm superphiz. It's funny, like you described me as something like some kind of community activist. I don't really think of myself as different than any other user. So and that can come across as weird, like, oh well, superphiz has, he's something special. I really just think of myself as an Ethereum enthusiast. I love to point out what people are doing well, and I think that what people appreciate from me is the positivity I bring to healthy action. And so one of the things you don't find me doing a lot of is putting down something I don't like or focusing on something I don't like. So as a matter of fact, like when I don't like something, I kind of steer away from it and let them do their thing, wish them the best. But I really spend most of my time in Ethereum talking about how we can be better, how we can grow, how we can develop. And that seems to be a message that resonates with a lot of people. So it's working.
Yeah, I think like on ETH Finance and the Rocket Pool community, like those attributes that you just described are so great for people because they kind of understand, right, that look, you're a human being and you do have negative feelings about things, but the fact that you so like unashamedly and unrelentlessly focus on the positives of things, I think that is really nice anchor point for people. And like it's for me too, right? Like before I started becoming a much more prominent member of the Rocket Pool community and like doing anything or any kind of action, I always like look towards you and was like, you know what, he's just a nice guy. So much so that I remember messaging you a couple of years ago and being like, hey Fizz, if I die, my wife's gonna contact you to like figure out how to get my crypto. And like you were like, yeah, okay, that's fine. which was so great of you. Like you used some random stranger and I was just like, I'm entrusting like all my money to you kind of thing. But that just, I think that positivity is truly infectious. And I think that like it's been such a great model for me to present as well. And like we'll talk a lot about your campaigns going forward, but I think one of the reasons why they've been so successful is because people have that trust in you, right? And I know that trust is a dirty word in crypto, but like they see you as someone who has repeatedly put the best foot forward and tried and failed at times, I'm sure, but like always tried to do that. So I think that's a really, really great like position to start from. And I think we do a lot better as a community if more of us kind of adopted that ethos, which I'm
Yeah.
really happy that you promote as well. And we'll be talking about that a lot in this episode, I'm sure.
It's funny. I wouldn't want people to imagine that me in real life is super
Mm.
fizz. I don't want to say that it's a character, but this is a version of me. This is a version of my real person. And in this version, I focus on putting my best self forward.
Yeah.
And obviously, my personal life, I also, I tried to be the best person that I can be, but I lose my temper. I say unkind things. Like I'm not a goody. Well, I try to be a good person, but
Yeah.
I screw up a lot. And
Yeah.
I wouldn't want anyone to imagine that this version of superphiz that I, can do behind a screen is the same person that I am all the time, because I really, I'm a deeply flawed person. I just
Of course.
try to put my best forward when I'm working with people in the Ethereum community.
I think one of the interesting things that comes out from that, right, is like, having versions of yourself. And that's a totally normal thing. Like, we have a version of ourselves that's at work. We have a version of ourselves with our friends, with our loved ones, our spouses, our kids, like, our families. And we have many different faces that we wear, right? But what happens sometimes is that we don't want people to just think that's the only version of you there is, because it makes you less of a whole human, right? And it makes you some kind of like idealized self, which none of us want, because we don't want to be seen as something other than a human, like just another person in the community in a sense. And I totally understand what you're saying with that. I think yeah, tell me about how like you juggle those different faces, like from the phase that you have in the online and the Ethereum community, and like the phase at home, and like with your friends
Yeah,
and family.
that's really interesting. I have always, so I've been online since I was 10 or 11. Like in the 80s, I was on BBSs, like where you would use dial-up modems and you'd call into other systems. And I eventually ran my own. And you learn to operate with an alias. And so it's funny, like people often ask, hey, what's your real name? And I'm like, just call me Fizz, because that is literally who I see myself as. That is that's how I regard myself in this identity. But having grown up that way, and having come through whatever, dig, Reddit, I have always used a bunch of different nicknames. Like they would be especially, like, I think of, this is maybe a little later, but the altcoin boom of 2012, when there was Bitcoin and it forked into like hundreds of different coins. I had a persona for each of those different communities, because it's important that people don't, one of the things people do, they'll look at your history and they'll be like, well, you posted in Datacoin and we are Datacoin too. How dare you? And so I would splinter all of those identities, and I get really comfortable just being the person I'm logged in as at that moment. And so when I come into my office, like I'm logged in as Fizz, and I am so comfortable in this identity. It doesn't feel like I'm putting anything on.
Yeah.
This is a very genuine version of me. It just happens to be the superphiz version of me. And it's just the way that I operate and the way that I'm comfortable.
That's great. I totally understand what you're saying. I think it's something that I need to cultivate a little bit better, even because I'm very much like I'm me kind of thing, and like put that out there. And I think I need to like limit some things off in some ways, and like try to containerize my identities a little bit better, because I spend too much time on Discord and it kind of bleeds into my real life, right? And I need to like I need to be better at kind of like putting those barriers up. And let's go back a few steps, right? So you started off on the internet in the late 80s. Like what were you doing online then?
I have always been interested in technology ever since I can remember. So I guess I think about in gym class in middle school, when I'm 10 or 11, when the kids are out playing basketball, I was one of those nerds who was huddled in the corner talking about like whatever shreds of computer information we had, like, oh, somebody, that the 8086 processor is doing this. And I don't know what RISC processors are, but I sure as heck want to talk about them. Or somebody's writing something in Fortran or using a Commodore 64, like to do neat stuff. I loved like the whole IO of it. It excited me. And for me, it was, even then, it was more about like the community culture of having friends who were into this. And one of my lifelong weaknesses is not digging deeper into into the development, like never really becoming a highly proficient coder. Like I can get by, but I was always more interested in the social aspects than the what I would consider maybe the hard work. And so social interaction comes naturally to me. But like when I'm writing code, like I spend 8 hours doing something that someone proficient could do in 5 minutes. And I still feel accomplished. I'm still proud of myself, but it's not something I'm proficient in. And so I choose to focus on the things that I'm really good at. And that's how I'm here.
Great. Like, I really feel like you need those people though, right? You can't just have, like, in the previous position that I worked in it was a technical department, and I don't want to like say too much to dox myself, but I was kind of like the conduit between the people who did the really technical work and then like kind of package their work in a way to present it to the world. And like I think that skill set has been really great in being able to like understand just as much as you need to get kind of like to the core of an issue and understand what the core of an issue is, and then present it to the world in a way that other people might not be able to. And that's a huge skill that I think you have, definitely, right? And it's really well suited to your position as the Ethereum evangelist, like because you are able to get to the crux of matters. I think someone else who does that really, really, really well is Paulina, who was liberosist on ethfinance, right? Like, and really did that so well that they gained a huge following on Twitter and elsewhere, and became a really well-respected member of the community, like the Ethereum community, because that skill is so rare to have. And people do it on different levels. And, Liberosis did it on like an amazing level, like, in so much as like, talking to Vitalik about technical things and like digesting it and getting it out there. But that is vital for us being bridges, right? From something really technical and complicated to a whole like new group of people, like normies or whatever you want to call them. I feel that I find that term kind of like derogatory in some ways, but like, the masses in a way, like just people who might not be exposed to otherwise, and you can do it in a really well rationalized, explained way that can make sense. So
Yeah,
that's really cool that happens.
it worked out for me in an interesting way, because when I got to college, no shame here, I felt like technical classes were too hard. I didn't feel like math classes as I have a logical brain, but those classes just seemed challenging to me. And with psychology, I could read the text once and totally understand it. Like I could walk in and do great on tests. And so I really chose then what I considered an easy route in college. Like I was there to have fun, to talk to people, to make relationships, and I literally like would just choose fun classes. And if it took too much work, then I would, I'll take a C or take a W. Like it's okay. I'm just here to have fun. I progressed through psychology and ended up as a counselor. And what is hilarious is all of my technical background really paid off as a counselor, because I was able to write tools that helped the school run more efficiently. And I spent 10 years writing a student placement tool to help students and teachers like sort of to form classes that were well designed for everyone. So essentially, like you don't want to have a class of like 15 bullies, and so you spread those things really really well, and you end up with classes where everyone's kind of happy to be there. And so while I didn't intend for that to happen, I really loved the opportunity to be like a technical counselor, as someone who scheduled and really gave kids the best opportunity to succeed in their environment. So that was a lot of fun.
That's really cool. How long were you a counselor for? 10 years?
15 years. 15. Yeah, I think that's about right. I left in 2018 for funny reasons.
Well, let's come back to that. Let's take a step back. So,
sure.
So you graduated college, psychology degree, I presume, like you said, you were doing psychology. So your path was to become a counselor. So I guess that was early 2000, 2003, 2004 kind of area. So what were you doing online at that time? Like in those next few years, in those next 5 or 6 years, like what were your experiences online like then?
Yeah, actually, I stumbled into counseling. I was a school psychologist first, and it just seemed too rote. Like you would really assess kids, develop a report, and give that away. And what I missed was like these authentic interactions with kids. Like I didn't feel like I was really helping them. I was just processing them. And so um I'm sorry. I wanted to clarify that just because it really helps me see who I am. Can
Sure.
you refresh me on the question?
Yeah, I said like, what were you doing like in the early 2000s to the late 2000s, like basically after as you started your job and up to the point where Bitcoin was created, like 2010, let's just say, like what was your online, like what was Fizz doing at that time?
What was I doing? Let me think. Dig and Reddit /dot Hacker News. I was not. I was definitely in. The trick is to think of what my usernames were then, because my usernames tell what I was doing. I was very interested in Linux kernel stuff, in low power computers. I was doing a lot of novice PHP. Like I loved, I guess probably 2003, 2004, I fell in love with this ability to do Web 2 stuff, to like interact with a page. Like,
MySpace.
yeah, or well, like, for me, a lot of it was like data collection and manipulation. And so I would have like a bunch of web forms where like, telling what I did throughout the days. And then like, I remember I had just this blank form that would take snapshots every 10 minutes. What are you doing? Well, I'm studying this or learning this. And then I would aggregate it over a few weeks to figure out like what an optimal schedule was. And it's just me really enjoying the technology. I often think to myself that you know Facebook and MySpace were really the zeitgeist at the time. I probably would have created those if I had been in college long enough to like for it to happen, because I had all the building blocks. I just didn't put them together as quickly as the smart guys did.
Yeah. And then, well, I'm glad that you're not Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay. So I think one of the reasons why I asked that question was because that's when I was like going through uni, like through college and like getting my postgrad, my master's, and all that time I was really involved in online communities too. I was quite big on Facebook and like whatever, like Facebook now I don't even use it anymore, but like, finding those connections with people and like making friends online and all that kind of stuff. And another thing that I did was I was an active pirate on the open seas on Pirate Bay. And one of the things that like I remembered, I was talking to my wife about this a few weeks ago, was that like if I had just paid attention to things slightly differently at that point, my life would have been really different. Because when Bitcoin came around, some of the early people who were using it were like people asking for donations on Pirate Bay, like in 2011, 2012. And I'm sure that I saw those links then, but it's just like sounded like something stupid to me. Like I never paid any attention to it, right? Like there was, I think, Leiden money or something at the time, and then there was Bitcoin, and I was just like, this all sounds kind of dumb. Like, and if I paid attention to it, even though I was in those communities at the time, if I paid attention to it, it would have been a very different life for me. But I guess you were paying attention to it, right? Like, how did that happen? How did you hear about Bitcoin? Like, when did you hear about Bitcoin? And how, like, what kind of influence did it have on Fizz, the persona?
Yeah, my memories are a little shaky, but I remember, at least I have this narrative in my mind that is pretty clear, that that I was on Slashdot and I saw this reference to digital money, Bitcoin, and I kind of remember like I remember sitting on the couch when I was reading it, and I was like, what? Wait, it's happened. Like, because I knew about the attempts, but I didn't really, I wasn't aware that it had like crossed this threshold to being like public. And so like that would have been March 2011. And it's funny, I when I the within 1 hour of having seen it and having looked into it, I was giddy. Like I didn't have any real computer hardware, but my wife had a GPU it wasn't strong enough to mine, but I was mining, and this is actually when the Python OpenCL Bitcoin miner came out. It's Pockle BM or whatever. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, I have to get on this quick because it's going to explode any moment. And I got to get some Bitcoin. I got to mine because it's going to be a big deal. I literally went to work the next morning and told my friends in my counseling office, I was like, guys, this is going to be big. I don't know when it's going to happen, but hey, have you heard of it? And everyone's like, dude, we have no idea what you're talking about. And I'm like, well, give it a week. It's going to be big. And I would check every couple days, and no one ever registered. And then before long, I'm just the weird Bitcoin guy. And I think, many of us have that experience where we can't help but talk about something really exciting.
Yeah, I think I have a similar, I'm getting a little bit ahead now, but I have a similar experience where I remember I was a teacher at the time, and I was working, and I went into I guess I was on Reddit. I must have been on Reddit, and I came across some front page thing. And this was in November 2016. I think Bitcoin had just broken its previous all-time high, or it had broken its all-time high. It was coming down back from it. It kind of bounced off it, right? And it was like $700 or something along that area. And I went and talked to my colleagues in the teacher's office. I was like, guys, there's this thing. It's called Bitcoin. I think it's going to be really big. This is 5 years later than you would have seen it, right? But by that point, it was starting to come into the public awareness a lot more. But everyone was just like, yeah, no, that sounds kind of dumb. And I was just like, yeah, it's kind of dumb. So I just forgot about it. I have this really strong memory of that exact thing, but instead of pushing and carrying on with it, I was like, yeah, forget that. It's kind of dumb. So again, that's another point that my life could have changed if I'd gotten involved at that point. But anyway, so you get enthusiastic about it, you start mining. How were those early days of Bitcoin? 2011 was still really early. Did you find yourself in Bitcoin talk or on Reddit talking about Bitcoin? What kind of things were people saying online?
Oh yeah, I was using Zwala to transfer funds to Mt. Gox, and then you'd buy on Mt. Gox, and even then, I don't know where I got instilled with the values of self custody, but even then, I was using paper wallets for self custody. I wouldn't leave anything on Mt. Gox. I must have, whatever had influenced me was good, because I didn't leave money on Mt. Gox. I was on Bitcoin Talk a bit, and I definitely are Bitcoin a lot. I was very active in those communities, probably until the block size debate, and the block size debate is really one of the things that just I felt like the Bitcoin community had just completely soured. I was watching firsthand censoring ideas, valuable ideas, because they didn't fit what the moderators wanted the direction to be. And
that was 2016, right? Or was it
I don't know.
2015? 2016, I thought it was. The big block was.
Yeah, I feel like it was 2013 in my head.
Okay,
because
maybe it was.
It feels to me like it was before Ethereum, because my loss of interest in the Bitcoin community, and even then, you would get your comments would get removed if you mentioned Ethereum in the Bitcoin Reddit.
Yeah.
Some of which I've grown to understand. I don't want to be in a dedicated community where if I go to ethfinance, I don't want to hear a lot about Cardano. I don't care. So please stop commenting about Cardano. Yeah. But then it felt disingenuous to me. It felt like, why are you censoring progress? And of course, now I look at other projects and I don't see them necessarily as progress. I see them as derivative. Yeah. But I'd really like to believe if Ethereum is superseded by a high quality project, that I have the awareness to recognize that and kind of hey, it's time to move. And that's okay. Yep. I don't want to be upset about it. I want to follow the best technology.
I think at that point though, as well, the communities, I wasn't a part of them, I can only assume, right, is we didn't really have the tools to analyze what we were seeing. We only knew Bitcoin. We only knew that there was this way of, transferring Bitcoin across, and there was this idea of decentralization, and there was this idea of being peer-to-peer and like cash and stuff, but we didn't have the full like understanding of like the blockchain trilemma in the same way, or like the core values of the blockchain, like, you know, just how truly fundamentally important decentralization is, and just how truly essential like being permissionless is, and being like open source and all these things. I think now we are far better able to analyze upstarts in a way that we want like 8 or 9 years ago, right? Is that fair, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I was doing a much the same role in Bitcoin then that I do in Ethereum now. Maybe on a smaller scale because I was still at full-time work, but I was doing a lot of educating and a lot of I made it my goal to read all of the white papers, and realizing now that's kind of impossible. But every time I saw a new project, especially on like what was in CoinMarketCap's top 100, I would read their white paper, and acknowledging that I may not understand everything, but at least getting a good sense of what the project is. And it really kind of honed my my BS filter for like recognizing one of the big things about projects then is like they would say what we're going to do in the future. This project is going to do this or that. And so I began to become aware of the need to look for what is possible right now. And that's really the thing. When Ethereum came, when I read that paper, I was like, wow, they're not telling you what they're going to figure out later. It's here, it's now. Like, I don't understand it all, but I can see the potential of these smart contracts, and this protocol has them ready to go. So that was just wildly exciting to me.
So you were in the Ethereum space from like reading the white paper when it came out.
Yeah, I actually I got my I remember when I remember the announcement on Bitcoin Talk when Ethereum was you know, every project gets an announcement. And I was intrigued. I actually, is it the Olympic testnet was the testnet that preceded Frontier, which is the actual launch of Ethereum. And I mined most of my Ethereum on that Olympic testnet. So for every block you mined, I think the reward was 5 ether, but you could actually transfer that onto mainnet and get a half an ether for every block that you mined. And I had my whole room just filled with GPUs. Wow. Which is, everybody's like, wow, Fizz is loaded. You know, Fizz is like Joe Lubin.
We'll talk about that. Yeah.
I have to say I sold it at 97 cents.
Wow.
Like, boom. Yeah. All right. Let's go on. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about that. I thought you were going to talk about something else. So, okay. So, then you know, they ask for donations, right? They ask for Bitcoin, and they say, you know, every Bitcoin you give us, we'll give you 2,000 ETH, which is like the best deal in history now that you think about it. But then obviously that was a sliding scale, so it went down over time. Did you take part in the purchase? Like,
yeah. I did it with like 4 accounts over time. It's funny. I was talking to my friend Duke like a week before that, and I was like, I'm going to put all my Bitcoin into it.
Yeah.
And then like a few days later, I was like, okay, I'm going to put half of my Bitcoin into it. And then it was like the next day, it was like, okay, half of that. I started getting cold feet because Bitcoin was the thing that I trusted. And there were all of these other projects that, you know, claimed to be the next generation. Yeah. Even though I felt optimistic about Ethereum, then it was still an unknown quantity. It was just another, on some level, another project raising funds. Yeah. And so I ended up with cold feet. I did use a couple accounts to get pre-sale, which I love to this day. Genesis one of my favorite claims is that I have a pre-sale wallet that is also a staking wallet. So I have that continuity, which
that's
I love.
Amazing. Yeah, that's really cool. You need a POAP for that, I think.
I have one. There's a POAP for pre-sale contributors and for
Genesis Staker.
What is it? Yeah, Genesis Staker. So yeah, I love it.
You need to find out how many people have those 2 POAPs in the same wallet though. Like,
wait, don't give people ideas. They're separate.
Okay, that's wonderful. So now you're in Ethereum, right? At what point did you start to feel like the Ethereum phase was kind of like taking over all these other phases that were out there?
Yeah. Superphiz was never meant to be my primary identity. It was meant to be one of 50.
Yeah.
And so, I use Reddit as fun, and you can like flip between your personalities, and it just began happening that I was on Superphiz more often. I really I gravitated toward the Ethereum communities because I felt like they were high substance, or what you would like call high signal, low noise. And other projects still to this day, they're like pump. They're like buy more, get more. We don't know why, but do it. They weren't substantive communities.
So where was the Ethereum community like congregating? Where were the people hanging out in those early days?
I started in Ethereum mining or ETH mining, something like that. I'm almost tempted to dox my account there. That was prior to being Superphiz, but I enjoy GPU mining. Having been a Bitcoin miner and switched to Ethereum mining, and having done it so early, mined Ethereum so early, there was just a vacuum of knowledge, and so the more we shared, the more successful and like the better the community we built. And so I made several friends in the ETH mining. I think that's it. Reddit. That was, I guess, my hangout near the launch of Ethereum. For better or worse, I have never really been highly aligned with the Ethereum Reddit. It has never been like my go-to place. I've always been on like these periphery Reddits.
Yeah, I think that's the case for me as well. Is like the first foray into crypto communities that I had was on Reddit. And I remember I was a lurker for a long time because I had this deal with my wife that I wouldn't like post in Reddit because she was always like, "Oh, don't become a Reddit bro," and I was just like, okay. And sorry. And I was like, "No, I won't. And I'd been reading Reddit for a few years at this point, and I was one of those people who like just go to the front page and just like find out what's going on, and then once in a while kind of like delve into these other communities. And by luck, I somehow ended up in ETH Trader, and this must have been in 2017. Yeah, 2017, late 2017, just before I bought. I didn't buy at that point, but I'd like check it out and see what the conversations were and what people were talking about. And that, I guess, was one of the first areas that I went to in the crypto communities. But then there were a few other places. I was, to my shame, invested in Litecoin at the time. So Litecoin markets was a place that I hung out in. I bought Bitcoin once. It was the first crypto I bought, but I sold it almost like a few days later, right at the peak in 2017. December 22nd, I think I bought it at. So those Reddit was the first place that I hung out in crypto as well, right? And one of the things that I learned early on was that this isn't something I should talk about. Like, this is something that I should keep kind of divided from my personal life. So there's very few people even now in my personal life who know that I'm like so involved in crypto as I am now. Like a handful of friends who also like in crypto know that I am in crypto, and my wife knows, and a couple of family members know, but like very few family members even know that I'm in crypto as much as I am. So how was that for you, like being part of those communities? And like crypto like was getting bigger, right? In 2016, big things were happening, and like there was a lot of enthusiasm about the space. How did that kind of like influence Fizz the counselor?
I talk about the things that I like, and so it's hard for me to kind of be a different person. So you get me, who I am. And so I was at work then. What's funny, and people who I work with will remember this, I for a year I attached private keys to the end of every email, and it would be a race for teachers to sweep those keys. And that was my way of trying to get them to be interested. My role technically is counselor, but a lot of what I did is like administrative organization, like talking about informing teachers about grades, schedules, and like what's this is the program we're going to do. And so I would send a lot of emails to I guess mass emails, and because people knew me as the Bitcoin guy, and I saw the value in Ethereum, and I wanted teachers to have an opportunity to get out of where they were at, to step, to join me. Like, this is working, this is great, join me. And so yeah, I really, just for an entire year, I think that I guess each one was $10, and it was a lot of money for me. But I had pre-mine money, and while I say that I sold it all at 97 cents, I did have enough that I could give $10. And so every email that year I would send in, I'm afraid students may have suffered from that, because I know, especially some of the guy teachers who got really into it would just stop because they're like, oh, it's a fizz email, we got to go and sweep this private key. And it went well. People would ask for classes, like, hey, can you show us how to sweep these keys? But it didn't end up that well, because I'm not aware of anyone who really became an Ethereum because of that. I think most people sold or lost their keys, or I had several teachers later, in the past couple of years, who were like, I wish you had just told me what that was. You didn't tell me what it was, and I didn't know, and I missed out, and it's your fault. And I'm like, I tried so hard. But that was a really rewarding experience. I have never been good at keeping it quiet, just because I'm so excited about it.
So I guess your first bull run must have been the 2014 bull run for Bitcoin, right? 2013, 2014.
2013, I believe.
Yeah. Okay.
I know, because well, that was 2011. I did my first Bitcoin sale in 2011. I bought Bitcoin at $2, and I sold about 90% of it at $31 around 2011. I paid off my credit cards, and I'm like, I did it.
Yeah.
And so looking back, it's easy to call that a mistake, but you have to go through that learning process of having an opportunity and losing it, so that the next time you have an opportunity, you can hold on to it. And so yeah, I think that was 2011, because I kind of remember events then. I don't know if you call $30 a bull run on Bitcoin, but it was then.
Of course it was a huge 1,500% increase. You did really well. That's a really good trade. But okay, so 2016 was when things. Okay, so I guess the 2011 to 2013 bull run was kind of like a storm in the teacup almost, for these people were really excited, really passionate about it, but it was really small, right? The world as a whole didn't really know much about it or didn't care about it. But 2016 and then going into 2017, of course, when we hit euphoria, that was when everybody got an idea of what Bitcoin was, and some people got an idea what Ethereum was. How was riding that out for you?
To be honest, I don't want to suggest anything I say is dishonest. I just don't have the best time chronological memory. And so I remember 2018. Was that the first time we went to 1,000?
Yeah, okay. 2018 was when we peaked in January 2018.
And that's okay. And so I quit my job in May. So I had told them before the crash that I was quitting. And then so the time before that, we were at 1,000, and I was doing great. There was a lot of interest. That was especially at work. People were very eager, like, hey, let's have a coffee group, and you can teach us about what this is, and we all want to invest. That's the thing I kind of hate about bull markets, is it draws people in, and I know this, that I'm essentially setting them up for failure. And I'm very forward about that. You're buying right now because you're excited, because it's in the news, because it's very high, but odds are good that the price is going to go down. And I really, I don't want to turn people off, but I do want people to not have the wind sucked out of their sails when it drops by 70%. It's just part of the ride.
Of course. Well, so 95% is what it ended up dropping by. Let's take a little step back. 2016, 2017, the bull run for Ethereum was based on ICOs, right? You said, when Bitcoin was having all these forks and new projects coming out, you were trying to read all the white papers. how involved are you with the ICO mania?
So EOS was the big ICO, and I wasn't really compelled by that, but I did lose. Again, this is probably the times that I've lost my stack without selling. So I sold Bitcoin at 31. I sold Ether at 97 cents. I, like Thomas yesterday, I went big into Butterfly Labs, thanks Josh Zerlin, and lost my stack there. And so my next biggest loss was Augur in that ICO boom, because I really believed in the fundamentals of Augur. I really thought it was like a fruition of what these smart contracts can do. I really believed in this concept of, putting a lot of people together to predict the most likely future. So I felt excited about the big scale potential of that. And what I did wrong was continually double down. So I had a stack, and there was good news combined with a low price, and I'm like, I got to double down. And so I would put more of my Ether stack into it. And between having sold early and having way over invested in Augur, I'm doing okay, but
Not Joe Lubin.
It's funny, like, to hear Thomas speaking. I just listened to his yesterday. Like, it's that recognition of some of the potential of a project, and then also you can't just recognize the potential. You have to know when to drop, to sell. And with Augur, I couldn't adjust my beliefs to fit the reality that Augur was not going to be successful. I felt like it just needed more time. And I was probably one of the last people to figure out that it wasn't going to thrive.
That's a shame. I'm sorry about that. I know we've talked about that before. That was one of the things that I knew about you was that, you got burned on Augur. And I think that, like, the thing with cautionary tales is, I feel like sometimes people just need to get burned themselves. Like, you can hear as many cautionary tales as there are to hear, but people still leave their keys, like, still leave their coins on exchanges. People still invest in dubious products. Like, sadly, there's no amount of warning that will dissuade some people, because they just feel like, I'm right and you're wrong. I think you and I talked about this a few months ago when I was talking in trading about how not over invested, but how much of my investment is in RPL, right? I think at the time the ratio was doing really well. I was at 90% RPL, 10% ETH, which I know you were just like, what are you doing? Learn from my mistakes, right?
I love Rocket Pool, but that doesn't mean that I would encourage anyone to put their whole stack in it.
Yeah, well, I didn't put my whole stack in. That's a really funny thing. So I know we're jumping around a little bit, but I heard about Rocket Pool and I was like, this seems cool, right? And my alts that I had, I guess I was like you with Augur. Like, I held on to stuff for way too long. I just bought and I was just like, okay, I'll hold it. Like, let's see what happens. And I held on to stuff for way too long that I shouldn't have. And in hindsight, the one thing that I bought that was really good was ETH, right? And ETH was amazing and it worked really well. And those are stuff I just kept on holding on to, even though the only thing I was accumulating more of was ETH during the 2018, 2019 bear. I was accumulating more ETH and nothing else. And then when it came to learning about Rocket Pool, I was like, this is really cool. What I will do is I will change my alts and take the L and just put them into Rocket Pool instead, because I feel like this is going to grow. So I think that was legitimate. But then what happened is, once I bought Rocket Pool, kind of like what Thomas was saying in my talk with him, was then you kind of like start learning more about the community, right? And then I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then that's just then I stopped accumulating more ETH, and I've just been accumulating RPL since then. And the only ETH I accumulate now is through my staking rewards. But the meme in trading is, I kind of made it into a meme, I guess, was that I sold my house and bought RPL, which I did sell my house. And I did use some of the money to buy RPL, like a chunk of the money. And yeah, let's just leave it at that. But let's go back a little bit. So how did you weather the bear market then? Like, you quit your job and then the bear hits. Like, well, I guess you quit your job and then, by the time May came around, we were in like I think ETH was like 300 or something, like, and we were like, okay, this is the bottom, like, let's not go lower than this. You know, the old easy peasy meme 324. Like, how were you feeling at that time? Like, were you feeling you made a mistake? Were you feeling like you good? Like, what was going on with you?
Uh, by that time, I was confident enough in ethstaker that I didn't believe I would need to get a job.
Okay.
But I did know that I would have to kind of, pinch living expenses. What aligned with that was having an infant. We had just had a baby, and so one of the difficult things, I was liquidated during that time. My CDP was liquidated, my MakerDAO CDP, and it's funny because I remember, like, my wife was at work and I was holding my baby, and I'm like, I have to choose if I'm going to try to save some skin on my CDP or if I'm going to attend to the crying baby. And I just, like, I'm attending to the crying baby and watching myself get liquidated in real time. And, as difficult of an experience as that was, I don't want to, I don't, there's not a silver lining. It sucked. But it has allowed me to be the person that I am now. Like, recognizing that my commitment is to my family first, recognizing that no project is infallible. Like, I take gains now without remorse. Like, yes, I will sell RPL to pay living expenses, and I'm okay with that. I will sell ETH to pay living expenses. I don't have any shame or guilt about that, because my priority is to take care of my family, serve the community, and then, hey, it's neat that there are also tokens over here. So I think that's where all of those, like, challenging experiences have kind of gotten me to the place of just being okay with my choices, like not beating myself up over something that I've missed, or I talk about it openly. Like, I still struggle with this need to balance my interest in my online relationships and my desire to be a really engaged father.
Yeah.
But I'm doing that struggle. Like, I'm engaged in the struggle, and that's healthy. What would be unhealthy is to, like, just say, screw it. I'm gonna, either give up crypto, or I'm gonna give up my family and do the thing I want. The struggle is really the healthy part of that.
That's a really good way of putting it, because it's something that I've struggled with, right? Like, over these last few months, I've been putting a lot more time. Like, okay, so my wife is incredible. I love her to bits, and I can say without any reservation, she's the smartest person I know, in online, in real life, anything. Like, she's incredible. And she's always said to me, right, like, it's not that I don't want you to engage with crypto, but I want you to engage with it in a meaningful way. Like, when you engage with it, I want you to get something out of it, and I want you to put something into it, not just be a passive receptacle of, like, all this crypto knowledge. Like, actually do something with it. So she was the first person who kind of told me that I should do, like, rocket fuel. Not in that form though, right? Like, she was like, do something that you're passionate about, share something with the world, put back things more than just what you take out, and be more active in it. And then rocket fuel came up later, like, in the conversation with Marceau, where it took that form, and then it started. But for a long time, I was looking for some ways to give back, and I just wasn't able to, because just being like, okay, I have an addictive personality, and I can get addicted to things really easily. And I think that I can see that in you as well. And what happens is, it's really easy to get kind of stuck in something and just kind of let it wash over you. And that's not productive for anyone, right? It's not productive for people in real life. It's not productive for the communities that you're part of, because you're just like an observer. You're not giving anything back. So at that point, what are you doing? You're just learning stuff for the sake of learning it. You're not doing anything with it. Like, I could tell you about all the events that happened in crypto from that period of time since I've been involved, but what use is that to anyone if it's in my head, right? And her advice of, like, giving back and doing something active is something that now I'm trying to do with the Rocket Pool community, where I'm trying to get people to spend an hour a week, and the kind of inspired by some of the stuff that you've come up with before as well, of giving back to communities. And I really feel like that has helped me kind of figure out that balance between that, what I'm doing for my passion and what I'm doing with my passion for my family. Because I have a kid who's about the same age as your kid as well. And I feel like there's moments where, I'm at the park with him, and he's playing and I'm on my phone on Discord. Do you know what I mean? And
Oh yeah.
that's something that I'm struggling as well. Like I totally can relate with you, like when you're saying there's a struggle, but I like the fact that you present it as a good thing in a sense, because as long as we're struggling against that feeling of getting lost in one thing, then at least you know where priorities lie, and you know how to try to, and fail probably, but try to prioritize things, try to balance things in a healthy way. I think that's a really nice way that you put it. So I'm gonna start. I think I'd like change my perspective a little bit.
I love what you said about like it's the giving back that matters. I have so many friends and see so many people who can literally talk about the price for like 1,000 comments. And I have zero interest in that. Like the price it's a trailing indicator of the success of the platform. And the success of the platform is determined by what we put into it.
Yeah.
And so I'm not a core developer, great, but I can decentralize the network. I can encourage people to make good choices. I can have a deep and profound impact on the success of Ethereum by what I do with my daily work.
Yeah.
And you get that. Like you are choosing to bring success to Rocket Pool as a platform, and Rocket Pool contributes to the success of Ethereum. Like I fail to get people who, well, I know it's easy. It's easy to look at prices and just say, oh, price went up, price is going down. Or no offense to people who do TA or draw charts, like that's fine, but I don't really see how it brings value. It's just kind of a passive hobby. And I love, seeing people who want to bring value to the ecosystem, who want to build relationships and bring meaning. Like I'm walking away from Ethereum with a lot more than financial success. I'm walking away with friendships and like this feeling of having done something meaningful. And that's so valuable. And I see you're doing the same thing.
Yeah, and like I said, like when we started in the beginning, like a lot of what I'm doing was inspired by the things that you've been doing. So like that's awesome. Like, and I truly like really respect that, and like it means a lot to me. I cherish that. So going back a step now again, right? So when I got into crypto, for me, like the main thing was check the price. I had my portfolio app. I would refresh it 2, 3, 500 times a day. Like it was horrible, like truly horrible. Like and I look back at that version of myself and I think, why were you doing that? I'd wake up in the middle of the night, Fizz, like during sleep cycles, and I guess everyone does it, right? Like, when you're just slightly tiny bit awake and you just go right back to sleep. I'd wake up and I check the price, and I was literally doing that 3, 4 times a night. Like, and sometimes it ended up keeping me awake. If there was a red candle or a green candle, I'd get a cortisol or like a adrenaline spike, and I'd end up staying awake for an hour, and my sleep was suffering. I just became kind of like a zombie, and that was not a good way to be. Like, yeah, it wasn't good. But okay, let's move on from that. Let's move on to that. So we're in the bear market now. And when did you hear about Rocket Pool? Like, how did that happen?
So I've been following, I knew probably since 2015 that proof of stake Serenity was my ultimate goal.
Yeah.
I wish that I had kept that in clearer focus, because I would not have like blown my stack early. but so I kind of had this recognition that I don't have the best self-control, but if my funds are locked, then I can get passive income from it, and I'm great. So I was watching proof of stake fairly closely. And I was watching, I guess, Danny in whatever 2017 with the 1,500 ETH deposit contract. And I was very aware of Dave's Rocket Pool Alpha at the time. But then I don't know if I would call it being selfish, but I was more focused on my own stake. I was more focused on like having 1,500 Ether and my stake. And Rocket Pool seemed then to be, it just seemed like another product.
Yeah.
And I knew that we would have fractional staking platforms, and there were some in development, and I didn't have a strong commitment to Rocket Pool. And even the RPL token for me then, like the tokenomics didn't make sense to me. And so I guess I was at this point where like I was a fan of what Dave was doing, but didn't feel committed to the platform or RPL. When things changed, and the timeline is kind of a blur, but I think the biggest recollection for me of like really turning the tide of Rocket Pool was the FireEye's tokenomics, when that was the first time in like at all that Rocket Pool tokenomics made sense to me. And I'm like, oh, well, that's pretty cool. And so that tokenomics paper really just kind of lit my fire. And I would say a short time after that, Patricio found me. I didn't find Patricio. He came after me and he's like, hey. So I guess he joined ethstaker.
Yeah.
And POAP, ethstaker, Rocket Pool, there's a deep relationship there. And through I guess through ethstaker, through my knowledge of Patricio's involvement with Rocket Pool, I began, I guess I had a few RPL tokens, but maybe like 100 that I had just really picked up on Uniswap just for like giggles. I really began to build my position then, and sort of build this belief that Rocket Pool is solid. And even then, like I didn't quote unquote sell my soul to Rocket Pool until I was doing these short podcasts, State of the Stake, and I was looking for a developer who would integrate all of the different clients into Rocket Pool. And I was like, I want Rocket Pool to succeed, but they're single client. They only serve Prism. That's not for a healthy network. I can't support Rocket Pool if Rocket Pool doesn't support the network. Joe Clappis responded to that. The guy we know is JCRTP. He single-handedly like implemented all the other clients as a contributor. And that's really, for me, what began the sea change in my attitudes toward Rocket Pool. This belief that Rocket Pool could not just be a contributor, but could be like
a beacon.
A beacon, yes, like a good actor amidst all of the other selfish players. And as that alignment improved, as I became closer to the Rocket Pool team, we did some ethstaker interviews with them. Watching Joe, Joe really took those early lessons to heart of the need for Rocket Pool to serve the beacon chain, not to profit from the beacon chain with Rocket Pool. That's really like how that relationship kind of developed. And to me now today being like, hell yes, choose Rocket Pool. It's a fantastic solution. It was a very long journey for me.
That's really cool. Yeah, I think for me, it was very different journey where I heard about Rocket Pool on ethfinance, right? Like people started talking about it. I guess you talked about it. Other people were talking about it. One of the first memories I have was Dave talking about it. I don't know if you remember Dave or not. Like,
oh yeah,
of course. He was like, of course. He was talking about how like someone was dumping it and it was going to be a really good price. And I think that's when Zero published his RPIT on ethfinance, and people started really paying attention to it. It was a few months before after that I bought it. Let's actually take a step back from Rocket Pool then and talk about stuff that was happening around that time. So Beacon Chain launched, which is something that you'd been excited about for 5 years at that point, and you were ready to stake, and you staked. You were a Genesis staker. Tell me about like the stuff that happened with Prism being the biggest client, because I think a lot of people in the community, that's how they know you, is from like the wonderful work that you did in client diversity and the push that you got other people encouraged and motivated to get involved in that cause. Tell me about that was happening at that time and like how that worked for you.
Yeah, you're right. Client diversity is probably one of the things that defined me, but what many people may not know is I was also responsible for pushing a lot of people to Prism. Prism was the first publicly available client, and they had their own test nets, Topaz and I don't a lot of gem names way back in the early days. And so I created tutorials and I onboarded people, and they had a really easy to use website interface. And so um, Prism, wait, they were first to market. They did great. And so there are all these months where ethstaker's having, these calls of promoting test nets and onboarding people. It was a really great experience. Like, I appreciate Prism for being first to market, but that was also followed by a long tail of, other clients. So a thing people may not have known then, we didn't really know which clients were going to be mainnet ready.
Yeah.
And
Genesis,
so, so I think we started, there were like 9 clients at one point. And so we didn't know which clients were actually going to make it. So when one did, maybe we put too much attention on them to the detriment of others that turned out to be really great clients.
Yeah. So then mainnet happens. Everyone's like, we had an amazing number of people staking right away, like nearly 500,000 ETH in the days following mainnet, long queue for weeks coming up. Then we realized Prism was like 80%, right? Like, or 90%, I think at one point everyone was using it because it was ready. It was being tested thoroughly. Like, it was a great client. Like that's the thing that I guess might have made what happened next for you kind of tough. So what did happen next for you when Prism took such a big lead?
We didn't know at first. It took time for tools to evolve and get developed that allowed us to really see that picture. And a lot of it first was maybe graffiti based or maybe anecdotal. I spent a lot of time pushing against the belief that Prism had a large market share without any real data to support it. And that itself was really difficult, because I'm even asking myself, like, is this the right direction? Because it was so anecdotal. What really saved us is a couple of things came together. Actually, OX and Viz from Rocket Pool Trading did some analysis, and I right now it's kind of foggy in my mind exactly how this all came together, but we paired that with, it was one user had, and maybe it was OX and Viz, had put together a list of deposit addresses. So we knew which entity belonged with which address. And we paired that with Michael Sproul's block print tool. Michael Sproul is a developer for Lighthouse. He developed a tool that would allow basically an AI algorithm to look at the packaging of blocks to determine which client created it. And so we put those two tools together. And I think we did that at clientdiversity.org by Hani Abu, who is also a rocket pooler. And that really put the picture into focus for us. And so suddenly, instead of me like shouting at the wind, I had super solid data. Well, maybe not perfect data, but really good data to say, these are the entities who are using Prism. And that was great. It allowed us to, I made some enemies here. It allowed us to put pressure on larger entities and say, hey, if you're with us, then we need you to make this change.
How did you make enemies? Can you explain that a little bit more? I don't really need to get specifics of, he said, she said, but like, how did that happen? Like, what kind of conversations were taking place?
I guess there were maybe people who felt that I was pushing too hard without giving enough time for large entities to make movements.
Yeah.
And so, maybe they would say, in the next quarter, we're going to have this much diversity. And here's me over here saying, I want it now. And, there was never any malice, but I've always been, kind of a fan of when we as a community are applying that kind of pressure, I don't want to take the pressure off until we have a result. because we may never coordinate to apply that pressure again.
Yeah.
And so if we remove pressure too soon and the effort dissolves and the result doesn't materialize, then we're kind of left in a lurch. And so it was just a, I think some of it also goes back to like, hey, Fizz is not a technical operator. He's a social operator. And so he doesn't understand the technical requirements of this. And he's expecting us to do something that can't be done. And I'm over here saying, look, I'm just advocating for the community. I'm just doing what the best that I can do to promote our shared success. So,
yeah. And I think that's the campaign that really put you on the map in like the Ethereum ecosystem. I think before then people kind of knew who you were, but I think that whole campaign, maybe I'm mistaken, but that's the idea that I get. It's like through the drives that you did through ethstaker and like the client diversity stuff, especially, people really understood like who you were. They got to know who you were. You became kind of like a known person in the community. Like, I think it's really cool how like ethfinance has kind of put out these people like over and over again. Like we talked about Liberosis earlier, who's Paulinia on Twitter. We also have DC Investor, who started in ethfinance, was a regular contributor every day in ethfinance like for years before moving on to crypto Twitter. There's you, who like you're still in ethfinance, of course, but they really became big in the wider community. Like, why do you think it is that ethfinance kind of pumps out these amazing people over and over again?
You're really giving me an opportunity to talk about something that I've been like really eager to address. And I appreciate anyone who has stuck around this long. But the reason ethfinance pumps out quality people, characters, whatever, quality producers, is that we have a welcoming support network that encourages people to grow, and we actively avoid unhealthy drama. Like if I can jump ahead here, because one of the things I want to eventually talk about is the health of the rocket pool community.
Yeah,
I think so much of this has to do with the kind of platform that you're using. So with Reddit, there's some really valuable characteristics to Reddit. And one of the most valuable things is this upvote and downvote system. And so if someone comes and shares a thought that is totally divergent from the community, it's going to get a lot of downvotes. And by a feature of that means that fewer people, especially people who are casual readers, are not going to be exposed to it. You have to sort of look for it.
yeah.
Discord doesn't have that feature. So anyone who pops into the Discord for the first time can say anything, and they are instantly on the same level as someone who's been here 5 years and who is Marceau or Thomas.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the tools that we have to shape ethfinance and ethstaker into positive communities. And another tool is we have moderation tools that when people are actively contrary to our ethos, when they are unkind or hateful, we send them a private message with a warning, and then we eventually temporarily ban their account, and then we eventually permanently ban their account. And the moderation tools on Discord, especially in Rocket Pool, are just so different than that. Like, I laugh to myself that you're not allowed to use caps or link to Reddit, but you can, tell people to F off, or like that's totally okay as long as you don't use caps to do it. So that kind of moderation, it's lacking on Discord, and it makes it so much more difficult to cultivate a healthy community. I totally went off there, but I've been dying to get that out.
That's okay. We're going to come back to that. I think we're going to talk about that a lot more. Now, we were kind of talking about your push for diversity, like the client diversity and that stuff. So one of the things that maybe we can move a bit back towards the Rocket Pool community is one of the things that like we were all kind of worried about in the Rocket Pool community is that we've given all these other people and entities a head start getting staked, right? Because Rocket Pool launched just over a year ago. It was like a good 10 months after the Beacon chain launched. How do you think, first of all, can you explain for people why that happened? And secondly, like, how do you think that has helped or hurt Rocket Pool?
Sure. the very simple explanation is that Rocket Pool took a technical approach to implementing fractional staking, and other providers, who many of you will know kind of who I'm thinking about, but it's not my interest to cite them. They took a less of a technical approach and more of a market approach. And so where other providers can say, hey, give us your ether, we'll stake it for you, and they have a bottomless bucket of, sure, we'll take your ether and stake it, versus Rocket Pool, who has this extraordinarily beautiful technical design that is smart contract based, that balances the needs of all parties, including the beacon chain, that has zero custody, which was actually, for anyone who followed, it was actually a big deal to get full non-custodial staking. There had to be a change to the Ethereum spec to allow a smart contract to manage this stake from beginning to end. And so I hold the team in extremely high regard for taking that technical approach. If they had not, I would not be interested in Rocket Pool today.
Yeah.
So that's the cost. The bonus, I think it's going to be kind of in the air for a while. I don't think we're going to be able to really see the benefit yet, but if there is a benefit, it's going to be this 20-year tail. It's going to be this Rocket Pool started after everyone, but they did it right. And if it unfolds favorably, then Rocket Pool will be one of the most long-standing providers. Obviously, I can't predict that right now. It makes sense from the perspective of network health. It even makes financial sense for people who want secure fractional staking with a liquid staking token. But we've discussed, just because things make sense doesn't mean that they're going to work out in the long run. We've seen really good products not succeed. With that said, I think Rocket Pool has the potential, a high likelihood of continuing to grow in market share for the foreseeable future. People are waking up to the reality of Rocket Pool, and that's very, very good.
I think one of the things that makes it so great is that our community is really well aligned, and I think we're really good at getting the message out. Like, people have described us as like rabid, like the rabid fans of Rocket Pool. And like, I think most of the time though, when we engage with people in other communities, we do it in a really healthy way where it's not, attacking. Although there have been moments where I could see why people might say it was an attack, but it was, promoting, having core fundamental values and sticking to those passionately and using those as the barometer with which to judge others. And one of the things that happened was, at ETH Bogota, there was a panel where a person on another staking system was talking about how hobbyists, and people being hobbyists and people not being practical or not being rational by being home stakers. And I think the Rocket Pool community, the Ethereum community as a whole, kind of bristled at that. But I think the Rocket Pool community were the one that really led the charge on pointing out just how egregious a stance that was. And that's the kind of thing that I love about the Rocket Pool community, is that we're so not well informed as well, but also match that with passion and really make sure that the scrappy underdog.
Yeah, I didn't go to Bogota. I listened to that later. Yeah. And I had one of the biggest temper tantrums I've ever had. I was exercising and I heard that. I ripped out my earbud and threw it on the ground and yelled my favorite words. I just what? But it just goes to show I want to contradict that message with the message that staking is a generational store of value. And yes, Fizz likes to make money. I don't seek money, but I like money. It's fine. I'm okay with that. But really, the value of staking isn't for me. It's for the health of the network and for the success of, you know, future generations, and yes, the success of my children, because my stake, if handled correctly, is likely to be in my family for 100 years. And I wish that more people who are kind of like, you know, lazy stakers, as I would call them, would recognize that long-term potential and take advantage of it.
Well, I think one thing that I might be able to give a counterpoint for that, right, is myself. So December 2020 came around, well, November 2020 came around, and you set up a bunch of Discord channels for people to kind of talk to each other and help each other get staking. I don't know if you remember that. It was one of the initiatives that you did. And I was like, okay, I've got 32 ETH. Maybe I can take part in this. So I joined, and you put me in a group with like a couple of people who were quite technical and a couple of people who were novices. And there was me, and I think there were 5 or 6 of us. And we talked back and forth, and I realized that at the time it wasn't for me, right? And also at the time, I figured, you know what, I could probably sit down. Like, I think there was Summer's guide that people were like saying, you know, it's really good, and like you can actually do it even if you're not the most technical person. So I was like, I can sit down for like a weekend or a week or whatever and like really figure this out and do it myself. Or what I could instead do is like try to time the market. Like in the next bull run, it'll probably be coming soon. I can sell, I can buy back, blah, blah, blah. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like in that mind.
Oh, absolutely.
I think there might be that even now there's a chunk of people who are not staking. Well, at least like maybe not now, right now, because, you know, we're in the depths of a bear market and it's been a year since all-time highs. But in 2021, I think there was a whole bunch of people who were in that position who were like, you know, I'm not going to stake now because of this reason. So there might be people out there, you know, who haven't quite understood it the way that you explained it, you know, that this is a generational thing, just get in and leave it. They might be still trying to be like, you know what, I want to accumulate more ETH, I want to get more validators, and then I'll be able to like just put it in there and leave it forever. So there is that side as well. Like it took me a whole year to see that, you know, maybe it's slightly different for me. And we'll talk about that as well, because that was another interaction you and I had. But
I'm not free from that. I still have God, I still have a MakerDAO CDP. I do. You'll hear me, like I will try to talk people out of those because I don't believe they're a healthy choice. But I'm not perfect, right? So when ETH falls to 1200, I'm like, wow, I really should take advantage of this because ETH can only go up from here. And so I lock some up in a CDP. That's a risk that a lot of people see as attractive. But that's also the kind of risk that keeps me awake at night. And so staking is so low risk that I can sleep comfortably knowing that those funds are making me, you know, 6 cents a minute, as opposed to, you know, a long position or a collateralized position that you're really paying a health expense for every day because you're getting anxiety and stress and you have to follow it and worry about it. I don't think anyone ever really calculates that cost. They look at the financial cost and say, I can handle this, without really thinking about what it's doing to their mental and physical health.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like I was telling you earlier about refreshing the price 100 times a day, right? Like that in itself is something that I've noticed that has changed over the last couple of years, is that I was refreshing the price all the time. Then once I actually started staking just under a year ago, then I was updating my Grafana all the time to see those little like ETH rewards up, you know. And now I just like, I finally reached the point where it's just like I hardly check. Well, I do check the price maybe about 10 times a day or something instead of, you know, 100 times a day. But I hardly ever check Grafana anymore. Like it's a different mindset in terms of the community now.
When we enter a bull market, I think both of us will be checking all through the night, and I look forward to that. Like, sincerely, I enjoy that. I enjoy being waken up by this gut feeling that we've gone up another, you know, $100, $200. But for me right now, being in this crab, I'm more interested in sentiment than I am the number. I don't feel like the number is as telling as what the communities kind of feel.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. So anyway, let's get through to go back to Rocket Pool, right? So we were talking about how they were late to market and stuff. So when we finally staked last November, you were one of the first 10 people to stake.
Colfax beat me. I think I was like the second like normie staker. Colfax, who runs Gitpo app, he and I were kind of competing. I loaned him my script and he used his script to beat me. Congratulations to him. It's all in fun. But yeah, I think that I'm the second normie validator on Rocket Pool. I was chomping at the bit to get there.
Yeah, but like you staked, and that was really cool. And I remember watching live on the live stream that night, and you guys were kind of racing each other to like get staking, and it was a really, really like really positive experience for me, right? Because I was seeing that, you know, this protocol that I'd invested in like was doing things. It was actually working the way, like it took a long time to get it there, but it was actually working. And that then gave me the confidence in my mind to kind of like start thinking about staking more seriously. So I think it was a few weeks later, I popped into Discord, and I was new at the time, and I only joined in like September of 2021, not that long ago. And it was a couple of months later. I still wasn't confident talking that much and like whatever. And I remember like being like, hey, so I'm thinking of staking on all nodes. And I think you and Joe were like, no, don't do it. Sorry. I was like, oh no, Fizz is saying no. But I think that was really important for me to hear, because I understood, you know, like I understood the arguments. I was in ethfinance every day. I understood the discussions that were happening. I just didn't trust myself, you know, to run a node. I didn't trust myself to have uptime and or mess something up or get slashed and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. And it was daunting for me. Like it was really daunting for me. So when it came to the next couple of weeks, I ended up buying my own hardware, and I ended up staking on January 1st. And that was partly because of you and Joe being like, no, don't do it. Like just do it yourself kind of thing. And
Yeah.
once I did it myself, like Fizz, I can't explain to you like enough about how much of a command line interface like noob I was or slash am. Like I knew nothing. Like I knew nothing. And with a little bit of help from support and a little bit of help from a family member, I was able to get things going and then do most of it on my own, right? And people don't realize that it's not that big a deal. Like there's this idea in the Rocket Pool community that we don't want to make things too easy, because that will attract a certain kind of staker who, as soon as they face any technical issue, they'll drown, right? So there needs to be a barrier to entry, like a small barrier to entry, but like some barrier to entry to make sure that, you know, people can not get slashed, basically, right? And we'll talk about that later as well. But not get slashed. And for me, that was a real worry. And I felt like the Rocket Pool community, the Rocket Pool, I want to say like the documents, Joe, the team, people like you, they were so welcoming and so like open. And it really meant that for me, I was able to go and stake and like had that confidence in myself that I was able to do it. And that, I think there's so many other stories like mine of people who, you know, were worried about staking or thought they weren't able to do it. And then once they got encouragement from community members, from people, they were able to do that. So I think that is a huge testament as well for people like you and people in the Rocket Pool community to encourage and kind of guide people in the right way. Because I could have spun up an all nodes pool, right? And like just left it and then pay $10 a month per mini pool and just that I could say I'm staking, but I wouldn't have been adding anything to decentralization. I wouldn't have been adding anything to the health of the beacon chain. And those were values that I had to actually sit down and like, you know, consider within myself. And that was part of like the stuff that you'd been saying before that really helped bring that to light. And so, yeah, thank you for that. I don't know if you remember that experience or not, but like that, I'm sure that's happened many, many times.
You know,
yeah.
I struggle with, so services like all nodes. It's easy. And again, I don't mean them any disrespect. I wish them all the business success that they can find, but they're not right for Ethereum. You know, they are an operator who serves multiple chains and who does like staking as a service on multiple chains. Chains who are less concerned about real success, real chain health, and more concerned about locking up funds to drive the price up. And that's just not what Ethereum is designed for. Ethereum is designed for a broad layer of stakers all over the world, independent stakers who are like guardians of the network. And if we cede that power to a disinterested third party who's just here to make money, then really what we're going to see is the value of Ether fall over the long term. And so if I can educate people and help people realize this value of decentralized staking, then in a way, like, I'm not just helping them, I'm also helping the network that I believe in. And in the end, it's also more valuable for me.
Yeah, of course.
I would like to say this thing about the difficulty of staking. And so you can think of it as a graph. And right now, I acknowledge that staking is difficult. It requires the command line. It is what it is. It's sort of like a Model T. And staking is expensive, 32K. It's a lot of money, whatever it is right now, 40K, I'm not really sure. It's a lot of money, and not a lot of people have that. But what people ought to realize is, as staking becomes easier, more people with access to funds are going to lock that ETH into staking. And what you're going to see is the price continue to climb. And so the people who are now saying staking is too difficult will later be the people who are saying staking is too expensive. They'll say, I could have done it, but I sold at 5K. The reason the price goes up to 5K is because it becomes so easy that anyone can do it. More Ether is locked, and the price continues to climb. We have to realize that easy staking will lock people out of the opportunity to stake, people who really want to stake, because as it gets locked, the price will climb, and those people who are really interested in doing it will no longer be able to afford it. It's a reality that we need to acknowledge. As much as we want easy staking is likely to cause the price to go up.
I think that's one of the really great things about Rocket Pool is that, first of all, just as it launched, it was half as expensive to run a Rocket Pool node, right, as it was to run like your own solo stake. And now, in February, hopefully, we'll be getting LEB8, what the community called less ETH bonded mini pools, which are 8 ETH mini pool, which will reduce the barrier to entry by half again. And then eventually, hopefully, we'll get LEB4s, maybe 6 months after that, next summer or maybe late summer. Hopefully, I'm not the team member. I'm just speculating, so you can take that as a pinch of salt. But that will then half it again. And I think Rocket Pool, like doing that over and over again, will be doing that over and over again. As the price of ETH gets higher and it gets more difficult for people to enter, then Rocket Pool will be making it easier for people to enter, at least for the next year or so. And I think that's a really commendable goal that we've had, is make staking accessible for everyone, or as many people as possible, right? And obviously not everyone, because it's impossible to get everyone to stake, but as many people as who can stake, to get them to stake. And another great thing that's happening is Joe is actively working on improving the command line experience. So the Rocket Pool team made the terminal user interface, not a graphical user interface, that has made things a little bit easier to edit and tweak and get your client set up properly and stuff. And it's still not completely in that, but it's moving towards that, right? And those are really big developments that are helping. I know that other teams in the Ethereum ecosystem are working on graphical user interfaces for staking, and there are different levels of success with that. But like you said, as it gets easier to stake, people will stake more, which will then make people want to stake more as well, right? So the incentives are really well aligned here. And yeah, what do you have to say about that, about Rocket Pool making it easy to stake?
That is, it's funny, when I first started publicly promoting Rocket Pool, and let me say, yes, I have financial interest in Rocket Pool. I hold RPL. I'm on the ODAO. I get paid RPL for doing that work. But what I've come to the realization is, I could never simp as hard for Rocket Pool for a check as I do for my organic excitement about what it does. So let's realize, or let me just be honest with you. My words are, they're pure. They're not motivated by any personal gain. And I don't know whether people need to hear that or not, but it's out there. I love that Rocket Pool is easier to operate than any the Samara SOC guides, than the native clients. And that's one of the things that makes me so comfortable when I deal with new people. They're like, I'm afraid of the command line. And I'm like, hey, that's okay. We have a solution for you. Rocket Pool is great. Now, I don't necessarily say that to people who are very experienced with Linux or operating systems. To them, I say more of, hey, you can run native, or if you want a simple experience, there's Rocket Pool. But I love so much that the team has just streamlined that node. There's still there's still that barrier of the CLI. And I have said publicly that I will not rest until staking is as easy as plugging in a toaster and turning it on, because I do believe that is the required future. But I love that Rocket Pool is moving us in that direction. It's great for the ecosystem. I do not believe in a technical barrier to entry. I think if people are invested enough in the ecosystem that they're willing to buy Ether, then that is their barrier. And if they choose to stake that Ether while accepting the risks, then we are no one to stand in their way.
That makes sense. I definitely appreciate that. And I think that that's a really good point that you make, right? That if you have the ETH, then you stake, and in a trustless, decentralized, permissionless way from your own home on your own machine. And hopefully one day it will get to the point where it can be like a toaster. And there's people who are making plug and play systems like Avado and Dapnode, and they've got plugins now for the Rocket Pool system, and you can run your Rocket Pool node through them. And they're not quite plug and play completely like a toaster, of course, but that's a way of doing it if you are not totally comfortable doing it yourself.
Yeah.
So that's really cool.
To be my own devil's advocate, people will say, well, they're taking the responsibility of voting on the network. If they don't know what they're voting for, how can they be trusted to make that vote? Yeah. And my counter to that is, if they're running vanilla software, if they're running software that's distributed by the clients, that is consistent consensus client software, then they're doing pretty much the same thing that everyone else is doing. They're running consensus client software. Yeah. They do have that obligation to kind of keep it updated and become aware, but there should never be a time when we're just like, you have to pass a competency test in order to stake your Ether. I don't buy into that, and I don't think that I ever will. I may.
No, that's fine. That makes sense. Let's move on a little bit from that. So let's talk about the merge. How was the merge for you? Because you said you were waiting for Serenity like for 5 years by the time the Beacon chain launched. By the time the merge came around, it was nearly 7 years. How was that for you? Like, tell me about that experience.
I began to get really fatigued. Coming up on September, I was sort of just like kind of hanging by a thread. My patience was thin, and as excited as I was, I just didn't have a lot of energy for it. And so I kept telling myself, get to the merge, then take a break. It's one of these exercises in self-control where why would I spend so many years investing time and energy into helping this be a success, only to allow myself to crap out in the last stretch? And in fact, that's a talk I had with my wife several times. I'm like, please help me continue to have the same positive energy, because I'm sick of it and I need a break, but I can't quit until we've merged. Yeah. And it went great. Like I have such adoration for everyone who put time and energy into the code and the chain and even the call. Like, it all went perfectly. And so,
well, unless you were running Besu Nimbus, which I was,
but you know what?
Yeah.
I'm going to call that a success.
Yeah. Because
the chain is
it was
multi-client. It's designed amazing for that. Yeah. So like, those, if everything went, so on that launch, everything was literally flawless. If it had gone any better, if anything had gone better, I wouldn't have believed it. Like, I would just, I would have accidentally entered a wrong reality, because it just went so well. It exceeded my expectations like tenfold.
Yeah, I remember everyone was trying to temper the expectations. We might lose 10%, we might lose up to 15%. It won't be too bad. We'll heal, we'll get back to 100%, well, not 100%, but like 99 or 98 or whatever percent really quickly, and it'll all be fine. And the fact that it like hardly showed a dip at all was really remarkable. Like, it was a huge testament for everyone that was involved in that whole process, getting to that finish line. It's just I was kidding about the basic numbers thing. My node was mostly running okay. I missed some attestations. Some people in the Rocket Pool community like really like this quality of their attestations like completely dropped off completely. But almost everyone was like, really happy and celebrating it like fully, which was amazing. Where did you spend merge night? You were on the call, right? You were part of the hosting it as ethstaker. How has that been like? The testnet calls that you did and everything. Like, there were literally thousands of people watching this. Like, did that give you stage fright at all, or is it just talking to your friends?
So that's really interesting. Like, ethstaker actually rented a cabin in, I have to say it this way, it's my funny, please don't judge me, in Canada. They rented a cabin in Canada, and they had their war stations, and like they were ready to go. I felt like I could do best here at my battle station at home, and so I didn't go. I wish that I had, sort of, but I also feel good that it went well. In terms of the call, so on one hand, you do get used to them. I get used to, number one, I'm very open about who I am. I admit I'm a flawed person. I don't know all of these things. I'm here to have fun with you, and it's okay if things don't go perfect. And so putting that on the table kind of tempers expectations. Like, I'm not going to give you anything that I can't deliver. And then beyond that, that call went really well because I think we opened it up maybe 2 hours early, just to warm up, which is funny because that was not supposed to be on the final video, and it is. But that 2 hour opener just really allowed me to welcome everyone and get comfortable. And it can be really hard to like walk up on stage, look at the number and see 300,000 people listening, and then know what to say. Like,
Yeah.
Me, I'm bugging out. I'm shutting down. We got power failure or something. But warming into it, it was very comfortable and relaxed. I really had a lot of fun on that one.
I'm so glad to hear that. How did you spend your 6 weeks off?
Really just working to, so obviously with my family, but really just trying to, in some ways, purge myself of this need to know what's going on with Ethereum. Because anybody who spends enough time, you develop this need to know. You realize that Ethereum is moving at the speed of light, and there are either people who are at the tip of that spear who can keep up with everything, or there are people who aren't even aware that it's moving.
Yeah.
And so spending so much time getting to the tip of that spear, to where like I had to spend hours a day just to not fall behind, it can be really stressful. We have talked about Anthony Sassano. Like, imagine the time he has to spend every day just to remain current. I can't do that. That's not someone, I don't have the mental capacity for that. So really that 6 weeks off was a chance for me to kind of prune my priorities and think about, where am I really going to put my time? Where am I most valuable?
Yeah.
And what's hilarious is coming back, not my priorities are pretty much the exact same. Like, nothing has changed.
Yeah. So what are your priorities now? Where are you spending your time?
So I'll confess, Marceau had this really interesting tweet. It was something like, I still believe in Rocket Pool, but the community is, a bit rocky. I love the Rocket Pool community, Rocket Pool trading. That is probably the place that I would spend most of my time, but I do not always feel welcome there. I feel like there is some contention, some maybe burning contention, or some sort of community weakness that makes me not always feel welcome. And there's also that part of me who is like, hey, Fizz, that's what you do. Like, you can right this ship. But I can't if people don't want to. Like, yeah. I can help if people want it to be fixed, but if people like it the way it is, then that's okay. So Rocket Pool trading is one of my, I spend a lot of time there. Also, I tell our ethfinance, I always come back to our ethfinance. No matter what happens, I come back to our ethfinance. And ethstaker for me is like, many of my best friends are in ethstaker, but I don't spend as much time in those communities right now, just because they're running really efficiently, and I feel like my time is better spent advocating in other ways. And so there are great people like Nick Sorikish and Yorick who they keep ethstaker and Buddha on the Discord. Like, they make it hum. And yeah, it's nice to go hang out there, but there's not really that strong opportunity for change that I love to find.
Yeah. So let's talk about the Rocket Pool community, right? So one of the things that like drew me into Rocket Pool as a protocol, and I was talking to this about Thomas, and it was for Thomas as well, and many, many other people, of course, is just the quality of the community of Rocket Pool. Like, Rocket Pool community is almost entirely in Discord, in the Rocket Pool channel, with trading being like the hub of most discussion. People talk there pretty much all day long if anything's happening. There have been moments, where there's no new message for like an hour, and that's like totally like, what's going on kind of situation. Yeah. But people are talking like all day long, right? The Americans wake up, they start talking until they go to sleep, and then the Europeans take over, and like it goes on, it never stops. And like we were saying about Sasano and about you, about being at the tip of the spear, that's where I am, right? So I have this joke that Kron sees everything, and then the second person who sees everything is me, because I go through everything, I read every message, and I curate like a newscast, basically, right? And for me, that's almost a full-time job. Like, I put so many hours of work into there. Like, on a good day, it takes me 4 to 5 hours. On a bad day, it can take me up to 10 hours. It's taken me to make an episode before. Like, it's a lot. It's a lot of work, but I absolutely love it. So trading is where all that happens. Like you said before, though, like with trading, there's no way to really distinguish. Well, there are ways of distinguishing, but like in general, a person who joined yesterday gets the same stand as the person who's been there for like 3 years, and or like is involved in the community every day. Like, how when you come into trading, like, what do you look for? What is it that you like about trading so much, and why do you think that it's one of those places where you spend the most amount of time online?
Yeah, so the first thing I'm looking for in any community is positivity. And it's not fake positivity. Like, it's not based on the price, and it's not based on like this fake feeling of, haha happy. It is, I could probably describe it as the "we are going to make it" attitude. Like, no matter how bad things get, it is the attitude that we're going to pull through. And I look for that in any community. I want to feel that. And I also want to feel welcome in any community. I look at the way commenters respond to other people. And if they are demeaning, if they're RTFMing, if they are like, if they're telling people just go read the manual, then like it's not really a place that I'm going to enjoy hanging out. I'm looking for communities where people reach out, and like, when you see a dumb question, when you see what is Rocket Pool, instead of like har, let's troll them, you see like genuine caring responses of, hey, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're interested. This is really important to us. Can we share it with you? And there are personalities in the Rocket Pool trading channel that just have a different priority. There are people who, I saw someone today make a comment about free speech, like, oh, you want to shut down free speech. And I'm like, you know what? I love free speech, but this is a community, and you can't come into a community and just spew hate in the name of free speech. Like, that's not who we are. Yeah. Or people who are like, I don't know if you're aware, like, I'm kind of encouraging people to develop a Rocket Pool ethos. And people will say to me, you can't develop an ethos or Rocket Pool because everyone's here for different reasons. That's true, but there are some underlying shared values. Those things ought to be welcoming, kindness, the concern for the health of the beacon chain, the value of like decentralization. Like, I think when we identify those and gravitate toward them, then people who are just there to be contrary, or who are just there to shit on other people, are really going to be sidelined. And to be honest, I'm sad that that hasn't happened yet. I'm sad that
It has
it's
happened though. So it's happened, like, it's like, and okay, so the famous example obviously is Marceau leaving the community, right? Like, and you know, that was something that hurt us quite a lot. And I think there was a moment of like introspection, but there's other quite prominent members of the community who they don't post as much anymore, or who don't like visit as much anymore. And you know, they kind of like did the silent exit instead of the, you know what, I'm disappointed and I'm going to let everyone know and then I'm going to like peace out. But that has happened. You know, I've talked to other people who are in that situation, and it's a real shame that that's happened, right? And I think one of the things that has happened is, in response to that, is like people have this knee-jerk reaction of saying our community is the best. Like, we're a great community, and we're a fantastic community. And I think that kind of stops you from being a bit critical of the community. I think you just, like, you know, to make any system healthy and strong, you have to understand its shortcomings, right? And you have to try to fix those. And I think the Rocket Pool community is something that's been so healthy and strong, and it's a huge asset for the protocol, and absolutely like I can't even state how valuable it is, like not just in community terms, but actually monetary terms, right? Like, it's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The community is worth millions and millions of dollars. And we should have the strength of character enough to say, like, pause for a second and say, do you know what? We're great. Like, and that's fine to say that. However, there are things about the way things are happening or the way things are done that can be better. And, you know, maybe we should pause to reflect a bit more, even when something like this happens. And instead of getting defensive, let's be open, right? Let's have a dialogue. Let's have a discourse. Let's all come together and try to be the best versions of ourselves possible. I really liked your ethos post that you posted the other day. I didn't actually feature it in Rocket Fuel. And the reason why that was is because I feel like it was still like in its really early stages. So I didn't want to be like shine a light on it too much, because let it happen a bit organically, and then I can feature it on Rocket Fuel, right? I didn't yet. But I mentioned it actually in today's episode, where I was like, you know, Fizz was talking about his ethos a few days ago, and then we were talking about this, you know, community self-moderation thing. So that was just in today's episode this morning. I don't think you've watched it, obviously. But I think that is so healthy to get even stronger, is that moment of introspection. And I think one of the things that I would be really happy is if the community kind of like, instead of getting defensive and saying, you know, we're great, or it's too difficult, or like, let's not do this, or there's too many different groups of people, different ethoses, it's too difficult. I think that, you know, if we took a second and if we tried, we'd, like, one of the things that you said recently, like, you know, if you zoom out enough, you can see common patterns and common stances. And I think that, you know, we really need to go through that moment now, because if things go well over the next 6 months or a year, and Rocket Pool continues to grow to the extent that, you know, we hope it does, there'll be a whole new batch of people coming in. And one of the things that ethfinance has done so well is, like, the bastions of the community have kind of held up that position of, these are our values and this is what we want to do going forward. Whereas I think if we don't do that for Rocket Pool in a more active manner, you know, community self-driven, not necessarily from the team or anything, but if we don't do that for Rocket Pool in the same way, we might just get overrun. And
Yes.
at that point, what happens then is the old people, like the old, you know, like age old, but like old people who've been there for a long time, might start feeling like this isn't the community that they belong to and that they were part of before, and then they leave. And we lose so much when that happens.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons that ethfinance has been able to hold on to so many people for so long is there's a very high standard of discourse, and most people are not aware of the amount of filtering that goes on.
Yeah.
Now, I talked before about like my disdain for the R Bitcoin filtering. This is not that kind of filtering. This is filtering that maintains a high standard of discourse, that doesn't allow you to flame someone without cause, that doesn't allow you to just spew hate or unkindness. Like, those are the standards that allow someone like me, like, I can go to a lot of different communities. I'm going to choose the ones that are welcoming. And by maintaining ethfinance as a welcoming community, I'm always ready to go back. But I look at the Rocket Pool Discord. Whew, one of the things that cuts me deepest. I'm not part of the Rocket Pool core team, but I've been aligned with them for a lot of years. And so I know their priorities. At least I feel like I know their priorities. I can't know someone, but Dave and Langers and Joe, like they have this very valuable product that they've put a lot of their life into, a lot of their life. And I feel so offended anytime I see a commenter come and say like, F them or F what they're doing. Like they don't know, they don't get it, they're out of touch. And I'm like, it offends me personally. And I know people are going to be like, Fizz, you're out of touch, you don't know. But I'm like, no, these people, this is something they've poured their life into. And I'm glad that maybe you've poured your money into it and you think, your money's very valuable and you want your money to grow and it's all about your money. That's not the same as people who like have made this their life's mission to help Rocket Pool become successful. And through that, the beacon chain, like it's so different to me. And so I personally, I don't know that I've really experienced personal attacks, but when I see other people getting attacked or other valuable contributors getting attacked, I'm just like, this is not a place I want to be. Like, I don't, Marceau, like, and I don't want to rant on this, but, let's not make it Marceau. Let's make it Patricio. Patricio is the biggest whale. If people attack him because he supported Rocket Pool early on, because he seed funded their startup, like, it offends me deeply because I just see the big gears, the big things that have had to happen over many years to get us where we are, only to see people who have a couple hundred hours of investment and they're like, this is stupid. It just rubs me the wrong way. And sorry, that was a huge rant.
There's ways of showing dissent as well, right? Like, I'm not trying to stifle dissent. I don't think that's ever a good position to have. However, I think there's constructive dissent and then there's just shit posting dissent. Do you know what I'm trying to say? And
yeah,
we need to have that, like I'm saying, the strength of character to be able to understand, critiques, and they're very valid at times, right? And you need to kind of listen to that. But that is very different to see from the opposite side, which is just attack and not give back anything. Because there's people in the community who are very well respected, who, come across as abrasive or harsh or strong with their words, but then they put in the work and they show that they care in a different way, if that makes sense. Maybe it rubs us slightly the wrong way, but it's undoubtable to see, the work that they put into things, right? But then there's other people who that's not the case for, like that don't offer anything of value and just only the negatives, no positives. Do you know what I'm trying to say there?
It's I think about, when I worked with kids, there's this personality type that I describe as contrarian, and it is, no matter who you are or what you are, I'm going to disagree with you. And like, it is kids who will argue for hours about the most minute details. They are the kids who say the teachers hate me, the teachers are mean to me, the teachers are out to get me. And, my role as a counselor is to really help them reach in and see that contrarian attitude and sort of turn it around. And it doesn't always work, but when it does, I have observed kids like totally change the way that they interact and deal with people. And what I know is that contrarian people run people off. People don't want to be around a contrarian person. I don't want to be around a contrarian person. But when people turn that contrarian attitude around and listen to other people and take different perspectives and try to relate, it's so much more pleasant to be around them. And at the end of the day, I don't want to be surrounded by contrarian people, even if they're doing great things. To be honest, there are core developers who are contrarian, and I'm like, I don't care. I'm just, I bet you're a genius, but I'm going to mute you just because
I
you're
know
ruining my
exactly who you're
experience.
talking about.
But it's like, it's well-intentioned people
Yeah,
who mean well,
yeah,
but I don't enjoy their company.
yeah,
And that's literally when it comes down to the end of it, for where I hang out, it needs to be with people who have this non-contrarian attitude that I can enjoy their time, because before we're creating things, we're enjoying our time being comfortable together.
yeah. I think that's one of the things that you do with ethstaker, right? Is like the rule is like be nice first, right? And that, I think, I don't spend much time in ethstaker. I never have really, because I staked through Rocket Pool. I just was part of Rocket Pool, but I know that people talk about it in really high regard and people really respect the ethstaker community, and that makes a huge difference, right? Like when you start with a position of be nice, I think that is a really good value to start with, and I think sadly people don't value niceness that much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is undervalued. When I first began floating this idea of welcoming first and knowledgeable second, there would literally be people who would comment and say, "What do you mean? I don't need to be nice to tell people how to fix this." And I'm like, "Well, that's how we do it. Like,
Yeah.
you don't have to be here, but if
Yeah.
you're going to be here, you're going to treat people kindly." And there was literally like a 6-month struggle of people who like demanded they were going to stay in ethfinance and they were going to be as rude as they wanted to be. And I'm just like, you don't fit here. This is not a right community for you, because we are a welcoming first community.
Well, saying that though, like there have been instances where people have left ethfinance as well, right? Like prominent members have found that the community wasn't aligned with their. I'm not saying the point I'm trying to make is like no community is perfect, but the main thing we should value is trying to improve, right? Does that make sense?
I don't expect everyone to be at home in trading, but I expect the people in trading to make others feel welcome and like they belong there. And if you don't feel like it's your role to make other people feel welcome, then one of us needs to probably find a different community. And it's okay if that's me. Like, if that's okay. Because I can definitely find or create a welcoming community. But if I'm in a community where people are choosing sour attitudes, then I won't remain. It's just, it's not my thing. And don't get me wrong, I'm not going anywhere from Rocket Pool trading. I'm saying that we need to grow beyond where we're at.
Yeah, and like literally, like we're both sat here as people who contribute so much, right? And we do it because we love it, and we still love it. Like I still love it, but that's not to say that you can't find faults and you can't find areas to improve and be better. So that's definitely really valuable. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about the ethos stuff that you brought up, and how do you see that going over the next 6 months or a year as things get, hopefully, as we hope, Rocket Pool will do LEB8s and then LEB4s, and we'll be welcoming solo staker migration. So there'll be a whole bunch of people will be staking with Rocket Pool in a way that haven't been so far, or just more. How do you think that we should set the foundations now to go forward for that influx of people? Like, what kind of things can we do?
I will proudly say that trading has been one of the most powerful and influential Discord channels in all of Ethereum. I mean, everyone has come to visit, like, and many of them have stayed around. But I also recognize the future can go the way of our Bitcoin, or it can go the way of our ethfinance. And we've talked about both of those, but one of those communities, and this is just personal, I don't speak for other people, one of those communities is relatively sour and focused on when number go up, and the other of those communities is it's an incubator for growth and talent and loving kindness and success. And so trading is at this stage in its development where it's going to decide which way it's going to go. And it's not going to be a quick decision, it's going to take time to evolve. And it's one of the reasons why I'm encouraging people to like consider what is the ethos of trading. I don't know that ethos. I can't just type it out and say, here it is, now go.
Yeah.
It's one of those things we have to let bubble to the surface. And I think that there are some epiphanies. People can say, you know, well, trading is committed to decentralized staking on the beacon chain. I think we can all, like, let's say if 99% of us agree with that, then it's okay.
Yeah.
To those 1% of people who see it otherwise, you're still welcome, but please don't spend your time trying to change all of our opinions, because we're committed to this value.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, I would say it extends like the value of friendliness. If 99% of people have a value of friendliness and 1% of people say, well, that's BS, I'm going to say whatever I want. Well, you don't have to be in this community, but if you're going to stay in this community, you may not spend your time exerting this value that's different than what we hold.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how it's going to unfold. I am glad to see, honestly, I'm glad to see LFO like spending more time as an anchor of the community.
Yeah.
One of the things we need more of are these anchor people who we're not looking for radical change. We're looking to stabilize the positive presence that we have. And so to have these anchor people come in and kind of maintain this healthy setting while we identify what are our shared goals, what do we want to be, and really at some point even like write them down and say, these are the things, this is who we are. And if you're not this, it's okay, but this is who we are. And that's kind of where I'm headed.
Well, with trading already, we do have like a set of rules right at the top of trading. So when you go to trading, it says, let me just read it out. It says, rule number 1, be excellent to each other. Rule 2, scams and FUD, insta-ban. Rule 3, do not ping the team unless it breaks rule 2. So like those, that is kind of, I guess, a foundational like constitution of sorts. So it's 3 articles. I think it needs to be more robust than that. What do you think?
I think people believe there are somehow exemptions to that. And so to be honest with you, I'm not a person who's ever going to fawn over a developer. I'm not going to be like, oh, Kane, you're so hot, your smart contracts are just the best, I love you. But I do recognize the time and effort that he has put into this project. And because of that, I think he deserves a high standard of respect in his own home. Like in trading, in Rocket Pool, I believe that it should be frowned upon to hatefully criticize the developers. And because they are sort of like product owners, it's difficult for them to be like, oh, you criticize me, I'm going to ban you. That's a really bad look. But that's where the community needs to say, whoa, we don't appreciate, you know, your attitude of, and I'll tell you, one of the things that just grinds me so much is F the devs. That's when I see that, I just want to throw my screen. It's
become kind of a joke now, right? Like,
you know, maybe, but if somebody said F you every day, okay, it's a joke, but it's not always a joke. Sometimes it takes a toll.
Let me tell you the my feeling about this. So when the LEB 8 max collateral discussion that was going on, which was one of the most, it was a very divisive conversation that happened. It was really strongly fought from all sides. Like people were really passionate about it. There was a moment just before the vote happened when we were still deciding on what the language of the vote would actually be. And I was one of the people involved in that discussion. And there was a moment where I said, F the devs, right? Like, let me explain what that was. So there was an idea of what the different vote options would be. And the devs kind of like, I think it was Langers who came out and said, like, this particular vote option, we won't really support that, right? And that's absolutely fine that, you know, they were saying that. However, the point that I was making, that point should still be in the vote. And I very politely was like, in this situation, like, I think that, we should discount what the devs are saying. And I presented my case and I said, I'm really sorry, this is my very British way of saying F the devs. And, like, it wasn't really, of course, that, what I'm trying to say? I think
Yeah.
there's attitude that you bring to the discussion. And even though, you can strongly disagree with the devs, there has to be a decorum to the way that happens. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's context because you're whack whack attack.
Yeah.
We know you. I know you. I know that you are here for the greater good. I know that you're not contrarian. So, I mean, while I'd always encourage people to be careful with their words, like, I don't, that has context to it. But if you were a person who was constantly contrarian and that's your line. I mean, the Marceau, the anti-whale thing, like that, when we're picking groups of people who we don't want you around, we don't want the devs in here, we don't want whales in here, that's not a welcoming community. It's not a place that I'm comfortable being. And until we openly acknowledge the need to really be welcoming, like, I won't be comfortable in trading until there is a, like, public standard of welcomeness. And be excellent to each other. It doesn't matter if it says it, if there's nothing to, like, promote it in action.
I think this one of the things that you were talking about this morning in trading, right, is like this simple action of, like, putting emojis on things that we kind of, like, want to flag to other community members. I really like that. And, like, I know that it's a very, very early discussion that we're having at the moment, and it's something that will need to be thought out a little bit more. But I really like this idea that, like, if someone says something and someone reacts to that emoji, it might be worth you to think, did I say this in the best possible way? Did I say this in a way that is open and courteous, or did I say this in a way that's rubbing people the wrong way? And like, I think that maybe will give people a moment of self-reflection, but we as a community need to hold those standards, right? And, like, be the best examples of those values. And that's what I try to do, is, like, I always say that, when I'm making rocket fuel, I'm a newscaster, right? I'm not sharing my opinion. And I try to do that, but I'm a human. And sometimes my opinion gets in there, and it did during the LEB discussions. And I put disclaimers in there, like, saying, this is what I'm voting for. This is why I'm voting for it. And this is my bag, right? This is how much, like, what I'm staking as. And because those are all valuable pieces of information. But I really feel like when people are kind of, like, clear with what they feel like are the values of a community, that is really important to everyone be on that same page. Like you were saying, like, if you don't agree with that, that's absolutely fine. You don't have to, but understand that this is how we like to do things here. And if you don't want to do things that way, then that's fine too. You can go and do elsewhere, and there's nothing lost for anyone in that situation.
And really, I don't want to be naive. I know I'm not stupid about this emoji. I think it's a great idea. But the first thing I would do, or I would expect anyone else to do, is to play with. And so, but my real intention is just to get the wheels turning. I want people to begin, like, thinking about what are the things we can do to maintain a high standard of decorum in here. And it's not that I have the answers. It's that I believe in our community enough that I think that we can make it come together.
I really like that. I hope we can do that as well, because I love it here, right? And we want to help Rocket Pool grow. We want to help this community grow, and I really feel like people like us and others as well who've been here for a really long time are the ones that can make that happen. So I really hope it does happen. Fiz, let me ask you a question. Like, what are some things that you're excited about for Rocket Pool, for ethfinance, for Ethereum? Tell me some things that are making you, like, happy and giddy with excitement.
You just started lagging out. Did you say what am I excited about in Ethereum? Was that?
Yeah, Ethereum and Rocket Pool and ethfinance, like all these different communities that you're a part of. What kind of things are you excited about for them?
To be totally honest, I am still in merge recovery mode. And so, I look forward, obviously, to things like withdrawals and LEB8, but it was a On one hand, I didn't do anything. The merge didn't need me. But on the other hand, I put a lot of energy into it, and it was a big personal expense.
Yeah.
And so right now, I'm just sort of enjoying my participation in these communities. If I were to imagine like I think I'm really looking forward to would be what things are going to look like after withdrawals are enabled. Will people take responsibility for the chain, take what they've had and stand by their word and decentralize? Or will they give up, abdicate their responsibility, leave or give their money to custodial holders, and just kind of let the network languish? That's, and to say looking forward, like that can have two different outcomes. But you know, it's something that it's the big view that I'm going to have my eye on for, you know, the next year or so, especially after the merge. I'm sorry, after Shanghai, after withdrawals, because that's going to help all of us determine the long-term success or failure of Ethereum.
Yeah.
If we become a centralized single point of failure chain, then either radical action will need to be taken to correct that, or we'll need to, God, I hate to say exploring other alternatives. There's no other alternative. For me right now, it is Ethereum, but I will just be monitoring that. That is like my long-term, what are we going to do after withdrawals are enabled? Are we going to decentralize or are we going to centralize? It's more important than I think anyone really recognizes.
Yeah, I think there's optimistic naivety about it, I think, in a sense, like, oh, it'll fix itself. Do you know what I mean? But and I've seen people like, you know, prominent members of the community saying, I'm not that worried, it'll fix itself. Like once withdrawals happen, things will get fixed. But I think we actually have to push that to happen in a way. Like we have to actively push it to be like that. And
me and that prominent figure like actively disagree on that take. And I would say I do have a bit of a reactive personality. I acknowledge that. And part of that reactiveness is recognizing that if we're not proactive now, then it may be more difficult to fix the situation later. If we become deeply entrenched with a few custodial providers, it will be extremely hard to right that ship, because Ethereum will look like it's working fine, but it won't be a robust network. It will be not much different than other failed chains.
I really hope that you and I talking in a year's time, and we're saying that like just how the merge went as well as it possibly could. We're talking about how the aftermath of the withdrawals went as well as it could, where we're seeing, you know, a much healthier percentage stake per organization or group. And, you know, I don't think we can ever say that all institutional stakers will go away, because I don't think they will. However, hopefully we can get them down to healthier numbers. And I really like this like pledge that, you know, you got people to make, or try to get them to make about the 22% number. And, you know, the Rocket Pool community was one of the first to come out there and saying, you know what, we'll not, it hasn't been voted or anything, but, you know, the developers in the community have shown strong alignment with that proposition, and that need for that limiting. And I think that, you know, when push comes to shove, we will do that, you know, and people in the community will do that. I just hope that we're able to help people realize that the people who aren't doing that are not worth staking with, and to take your stake elsewhere. And I really hope that we're clear enough with that message to make that happen. So
I know that when Rocket Pool gets near 20%, it's going to be very difficult for casual members of the community, even for like well-respected members of the community, to honor that standard. But the reality is that Rocket Pool cannot take over the network. It needs to remain decentralized on all levels, and it's the reason that I welcome custodial providers. Like I celebrated Bitcoin Swiss the other day for their staking activity. Like they are welcome on the network. Please come be a good steward, but welcome. And when you're not a good steward, then we all have an obligation to call that out.
Of course. Okay, well, Fizz, is there anything that you'd like to add, that you'd like to talk about before we wrap things up here? We've been talking for a long time. It's been an amazing chat, absolutely amazing chat. So is there anything that you'd like to talk about?
Do you think anyone has listened this long?
Yeah, of course.
Really?
Yeah, I look at the analytics and like a whole bunch of people watch the videos all the way through.
The wheels in my head right now are, how do I give a POAP to people who listen to this far? Hold on, let me think about it.
we'll have to, I don't know how we can do that.
Well, but because the moment we offer a secret word, like it goes straight to the ping Discord and like boom. But so you know what? Thank you all. Thank you everyone for supporting Rocket Pool, for supporting the Ethereum Beacon Chain. Thank you, Whack Whack Attack, for like going out of your comfort zone, doing this essentially for free to just like improve the ecosystem for everyone. Like above all, we are a community. And when you think about what a community means, it is people who work together for everyone's shared best interest. And so thanks to everyone for playing along.
Yeah, there's so much more to talk about, Fizz. I want to talk about the Stoner Cats debacle and like Jonathan Mann writing a song. I want to talk about like the Fizz fans, like there's so much to talk about. Like I could literally talk to you for hours about this stuff. But
I want to ping him about your 100th episode. We mentioned that.
You're welcome. I'm not going to do that because that would look kind of douchey.
I'm happy to. Yeah, no. But yeah, let's start a DM about that, and I will get him in. And I can't guarantee what he's going to do, but I'm definitely happy to invite him.
Thank you so much, Fizz. I really appreciate that, and thank you for everyone who's watched this mammoth episode. But I hope it was a good one for everyone. So yeah, I really appreciate it. I'm going to stop recording now.